Listen up. I said listen up. Most of you guys started at CK 4 years ago. Some of you 6 years. Well, you've tackled the White Mountains, Mount Kathadin, the Moose River boat trip, or even sailed off the coast of Boothbay. Now it's time to get serious. We're heading out on the trip of your lives. Many of you are following in the footsteps of your brothers, father, and grandfather. It's time to suck it up and find out if you are boys or will be young men. We have 18 days to do it. Let's shove off. Grab those paddles. Put your backs into it. Fort Kent, here we come.
Camp Kennebec began with its emphasis on youth. Charles Fox, Louis Fleisher, and Milton Katzenberg had little experience. But with an honest handshake and $3,000, Camp Kennebec began in 1907 with 48 campers.
Charles, Milton, and I would go to Maine in the summer because we loved the outdoors. It gave us a chance to look at the world differently than seeing it through our friends from Philadelphia. Sitting around the campfire one night, we arrived at our principles to starting the camp. The word camper formed the cornerstone of our beliefs. Companionship, accuracy, modesty, purity, enthusiasm, reverence. A few years later, Samuel Friedman became an influential camp director.
The simplicity of tent living, competitive activities teaching how to win and lose, and the wilderness experience demanded teamwork. This was a true character-building institution.
In 1916, Charles and I met Herman Pritchard and hired him to be headmaster of Camp Kennebec. An all-American footballer at Swarthmore College, Uncle Pritch had a booming voice and would always say,
"Hello, boys!"
Andrew Watson's house in the North Belgrade woods of Salmon Lake was Camp Kennebec's home. Wood-paneled structures housed assembly programs and inspirational talks. Maroon and Grey camp shirts, fashioned from an Indian tribe in Michigan, represented the brothers at war. There were nightly gatherings around the flagpole to serenade campers after taps.
Dan Rosenberg. I was a camper from 1964 to 1968, and I worked at Senior from 1969 to 1973. With Kennebec's rich tradition of pranks, the 1969 Uncle's Party was no exception. The jukebox was not removed the next day, and many of us living in the waiters' cabins decided that at 2 a.m. the next morning, the campers might like to be entertained with a song called Guitar Zan. We went into Watson Hall, we cranked up the volume, we headed for cover, and someone came into Watson Hall and unplugged the jukebox. We went back for an encore, but when we came back to set off the music for a 3P, we noticed that the jukebox cable had been severed. The next morning, Uncle Hart called in his crack investigator, Artie Clark. Uncle Artie concluded that the perpetrator had used an axe, chopping with his left hand, to cut the cable. We have never solved the crime, and it remains unsolved to this day, but I do believe the perpetrator is here at the reunion tonight.
There was only one store in North Belgrade, and it was important to the camp from the onset. C.J. Anderson Sr. and his son Charles, a great old Maine family, owned the general store and post office. Shoes and moccasins hung from the ceiling above the candy counter, and ice cream cones were standard fare. C.J. would always tell the boys, "No money needed, just charge it."
And then there was Tukey's. If caught, you walked home naked.
My story centers on Tukey's. So, one fine day, myself and a co-camper named Jeff Zeman, who had the nickname Zeman the Demon, was pretty much known for his Tukey sneak, grabbed me at lunch hour and said, "Let's go, we're going." Well, that was a major mistake right there, because when I went to call and look for everybody at lunch, Mers and Zeman were gone. Well, we didn't know that. We were through the woods, across the street, at Tukey's, enjoying our nice ice cream cone, when did we happen to look out, and there was a truck. And we go, "Oh my gosh," and it was Earl Ferguson with this look that he was just mad as a hornet. Anyway, we ran into the back bathroom, but the next thing we know, Earl blasted into place, pounded on the bathroom door, grabbed us both by the scruff of our shirts, carried us back to Kennebec, and then rang the bell for the whole camp to come out. with that, we had to strip down our underwear, as Earl said. I want you two boys to hold hands, go ring around the rosy and say, "We got caught, we got caught." And unfortunately that's happened. But the good part of the story is we did get a little retribution, because I believe a night or two later, Zeman and I went near Uncle Earl's cabin with an M80 little firecracker, put it inside of a cigarette, ran back to our bunks, were neatly asleep when the rapid explosion happened, and Earl came running out, flying out, looking for us on our bunks. But we were nicely tucked in, just a bunch of little angels. So sometimes the Tukey stories do have a good ending.
Camp Kennebec Jr. opened in 1921, with the campsite chosen 1 mile across the southern end of the lake from Kennebec Sr. The camp took on the identity of Indian tribes: Abenaki, Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Micmac, Malisite, Norridgewock. Each tribe had its own territory in the woods along the lake's eastern shore.
Hi, my name is Bill Brandeis. I was in the first section in 1951. My wife Arlene and I have a house on Passy Beach and own the land from Passy to Junior Camp. In 1994, we built the house. As the builder was preparing the site for construction, miscellaneous pieces of wood were accumulated and prepared for the trash pile. A little research on my part realized that one of those pieces was not a miscellaneous piece of wood, but was instead an important part of the Kennebec camping experience. You and I all know how this board was used. In fact, I bet that some of you may have had a personal experience with this actual board. The board now has a permanent place of honor at our house.
Senior Camp's landscape through the years kept its same compass points: the Quad, Watson Hall, Bell Tower, Fox Lodge, Camp Bus, and the functional HOL.
It seems we don't need the physical camp to sustain friendships from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But I often think of the physical camp, the waterfront, the athletic fields, the sailboats on their moorings, the archery range and rifle range. The buildings themselves were simple and honest. The dining hall, like a huge porch, the cabins and tents, the HOL, the ping pong pavilion, Watson Hall, and the stage, a half building with green room, wings, and stage under the roof, and the audience under the tent, watching plays and movies and swatting mosquitoes. I recall the off-campus buildings as well, 3 in particular. First is Golubchik House, built for Uncle Lou Fleisher before the First World War, and stuffed with ancient artifacts, including Uncle Lou. When I became director, he summoned me to Golubchik House and gave me good advice. Keep campers safe and allow them to take risks. The second building, where I still visit, is the sprawling Kennebec Lodge, built for the Fox family at the north end of the lake in camp's first year. And the third building was my own A-frame, built by Uncle Reggie Ellis in 1969. I would paddle across to camp at 6:45 in the morning and paddle back at about 10 p.m. A perfect commute. My favorite building in camp was Fox Lodge, with its director's office, Uncle Abe's office, and the main room with its stone fireplace and a phone booth housing camp's single telephone shared by 250 people. Its best room was the library, with a wall of windows facing the lake, and the side walls shelving dusty old books from floor to ceiling. On occasion, a curious counselor or camper or director would actually read one of those books. Ayun Kiniyasne.
The first section was referred to as the Men from the Cabins. Years later, with the Grand Cabin built in 1946, a sign over the door warned younger campers, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter." First section privileges from the beginning included staying up after taps, unlimited purchases at the store, and dressing in all white. The first section also saw to their own immortality by means of their prophecies, wills, and valedictories.
Hi, Mike Idacelli back again with another tale of camaraderie from the North Woods. Occasionally throughout the summer, a personal or a camp property would mysteriously vanish, only to reappear at a location not typically associated with its routine use. One evening in the late 60s, after returning from a night of Waterville revelry, Counselor Bob Sinks found that his beloved motorcycle was no longer where he had parked it. A search effort at that time was not successful. At breakfast the next morning, both campers and counselors alike were treated to the sight of said motorcycle suspended from the mess hall beams with rope lashings that would have made Spider-Man proud. No witnesses were forthcoming at that time. Another time, the entire bed of an unseasoned counselor vanished from his tent platform as if teleported by aliens. History does not record where he slept that evening. The following morning, Dip Club members were bemused to find the bed, blankets tucked with military precision, resting comfortably on the waterfront floating dock, apparently no worse for wear. Members of the administration attributed these and similar odd behaviors to either A, the intensity of Maine's northern lights, B, drinking too much lake water, or C, too many trips to the Bob Inn. Those of us that know better, however, still aren't talking. Rip Raw Rex.
Hi, Kennebeckers. My name is Earl Ferguson, or as some of you may know me, Fergie. From 1957 through 1959, I was a camper at Kennebec Jr., including being the medicine man of the Passamaquoddy tribe in 1959. We learned to be independent, yet dependent on our teammates, our tribe members, our color war team, our cabin mates, our section mates, etc. We learned how to be competitive. Some say it was too competitive by today's standards. But life itself is competitive, and the earlier we learn that, the better off we will be. We learned how to win, but more importantly, we learned how to lose. There were storied traditions that guided white t-shirt fights, cold water dip club swims, rifle matches, stage productions, the Kennebec race on July 4th, the obstacle race during the last week of camp, and many, many more. And there's one more etched into my memory when the first section of 1968 asked me to deliver the uncle speech at the final campfire. Oh, how I wish I'd saved those words. The only ones I can still remember are, and I quote, "To the first section, tonight feels like something is slipping out of your hand, and you just can't stop it," unquote.
Dramatics and humor have always been staples of first section life, with plays written by campers and counselors lampooning the camp. In 1938, the play The Great Kennebec Train Robbery starred sleuth Elliot Ness from the detective firm Mitchell & Ness, singing the tune Shoeless Dan from Horace Man.
Dan Alexander, 1944 to 1978. There are three parts to my career: as a camper, as a counselor, and then as a partial owner. As a camper, I think the most important thing were the trips that all of us took, from Kathadin to the Allagash. And of course, then I went on to be a counselor, and as a counselor, I really appreciated the work that the other men did for me. And of course, people like Bill Idacelli and Pat Patterson and Mal Dawson and Artie Clark. And that was great, great fun. The quality of the people. As the person who ran camp for a while as head counselor, my relationship with kids, the importance of kids doing what was good for them. And as Hartstarter said, a good camp has three things: land, program, and people. And Kennebec excelled at that.
I'm Bob Stern. I started junior camp in 1948. I was in the first section of 1954. Then I became a waiter and then a counselor. And I ended in 1962, right before my third year of law school. One day when we went to the mess hall for lunch, they let loose a greased pig in the mess hall, and it went scurrying all around, squealing all the time. Of course, we were trying to grab it. It was impossible to catch it. Finally, it got cornered, and at that point, all the chairs were turned over, probably some of the tables, and I don't think we ever finished the lunch. Another fantastic thing that happened was when a helicopter was circling around over the lake. And we all went down to see what was happening, and it appeared that someone jumped out of the plane without a parachute, landed in the lake. A boat went out to see what happened, and they fished what appeared to be a body out of the water and brought back to land, and it turned out to be Frank Binswanger, David Binswanger's grandfather. I don't think he came out of the plane. I think they threw a dummy out from the plane, and that Frank was in the bottom of the boat the whole time.
Through the war years, Camp Kennebec stayed relevant. Hart Stoddard, a camper in the late 30s and a waiter in the 40s, became director in 1953.
This game of baseball is only one half skill. The other half is something else. Something bigger. You gotta have heart. All you really need is heart. When the odds are saying you'll never win, that's when the grin should start. You gotta have heart.
A few years later, Harry Myers would take on the job as director, continuing the double identity as camper turned director.
I'm just wild about Harry, and Harry's wild about me. The heavenly blisses of his kisses fills me with ecstasy.
It was my first year at Kennebec. I didn't go to junior camp, but my cousin did, and my parents thought it would be good for me to join him at senior camp. On our first trip as a pioneer, we climbed Mount Tumbledown and Mount Cannon. It tested our abilities and strengths. The 6-day trip ended exploring the Lost River and sleeping in hikers' huts. What an experience it was. I couldn't wait to go home and tell my parents.
Each year, the trips became more challenging, and the activities built one's strength and mental toughness. The second year Mount Kathadin trip climbed Mount Sentinel as a conditioner. Mount Kathadin's Knife's Edge was always an interesting story. These young mountaineers would follow this trip by paddling the Great Circle, the oldest itinerary in Kennebec history.
Hi, I'm Donnie Clark, as some of you know. I hope you like the shirt. It's 60 years old. My first memories of Kennebec are Uncle Hart Stoddard and Uncle Harry Myers showing up in the early spring to inspect camp, and they'd show up at our house. Of course, you realize I grew up 2 miles from the camp, so it became pretty much a way of life. Camping, fishing, hiking, canoeing, it was just a natural thing. I always thought Kennebec's heart was Salmon Lake, but I felt its soul was a dining hall at Chesapeake, with everybody's names there from the first section before they went on the Allagash. Pretty neat place. I'm sorry it isn't there anymore. As far as all you guys go, I learned so much from everybody. It gave me a great foundation to be a better person all the way around. And as you can see, I'm still maroon and gray.
The Moose River trip for third-year men provided an excursion encompassing the paddling of Atian Lake, the carry to Holland Pond, the climb of Mount Sally, the paddle to Moose River, then Long Pond and Brossaw Lake, and finally the canal climb on the Chain Trail. Camp Kennebec, an outpost 150 miles north of North Belgrade on isolated Chesapeake Lake, was added to Kennebec in 1925. It was a special domain, and the launching pad for the Allagash River trip.
My name is Max Davis.
I first went to Kennebec Junior as a 9-year-old in June of 1960. My best recollection of serving as a counselor at Camp Kennebec was that one needed a certain amount of stamina. The young guys, the college-age counselors, would go into Waterville almost every night and drink beer at one of the local establishments, Big John's or the Bob Inn, and then manage to stumble back to camp and rise with the kids and lead them enthusiastically through their activities during the day. So I went into the grocery store with Artie, and while no one was paying any attention, I bought a case of beer. I also found a huge box that said eggs on it and that would have held multiple cartons of beer, or cartons of eggs. So I put the case of beer in the egg box and put it on the back of the truck with all the other groceries and took it up to Suncook and took the beer with me down the Allagash that year, such that the whole case somehow got consumed before we got to Fort Kent. Artie Clark knew I had the beer, didn't particularly approve, but Artie, being what he was, didn't rat me out either. But nonetheless, I've carried the guilt with me for these 45 plus years that I somehow betrayed the trust of Tom Wilson and Dan Alexander by bringing a case of beer down the Allagash in 1971. So I'm using this opportunity to offer my heartfelt apologies for betraying that trust, and know that I've been particularly racked with guilt for all this time. I loved Camp Kennebec.
The Allagash itinerary of the first section is hallowed by unpredictability and beauty. The Allagash trip begins in the Umbazisca stream and ends at Fort Kent. To each man who has taken part in this adventure, the names that make up the route are well known. Mud Pond, Lock Dam Carry, Eagle Lake, Devil's Elbow, Rankin Rapids. All these conjure up sights, scenes, memories of challenge and trepidation, always in the context of companionship.
Hello, fellow Kennebeckers. It's in the spring of the year. The ice is going out of Salmon Lake and McGraw Pond. This is a good time to think about upcountry camping. Of course, the Mud Pond Carry, Chamberlain Lake, Chase's Carry, and down through the St. Johns River. It was a wonderful 30 years, and I hope we made your year there as happy as it did for me. Thinking of you many times. Amen.
This is the Kennebec story. Adventure, self-fulfillment, learning, and camaraderie. It was written some years ago in one of the yearbooks.
Some of us will agree that Kennebec is in reality an escape from the sophistication of the modern world. It is hard to imagine that historic events, such as the landing of humans on the moon, have been going on while we've been isolated in the woods of Maine.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Our escape, if handled properly, can be one of the best tools we can use when we depart from here not as campers, but as men under our own motivation.
Hi, I'm Mickey Langsfeld, first section, 1957. Kennebec has always been a special part of my life. I was lucky enough to be a camper for 7 years and a counselor for 7 years. I enjoy the outdoors, the competition, learning how to win, learning how to lose, and taking the trips, being in the outdoors, and living a little bit more rustic than I did growing up in the Philadelphia area. Most of all, I just remember the camaraderie, the friends I met that I have enjoyed through the camp years, after the camp years, and continue to have a relationship with the people to this day. As a counselor, I hope to continue that growth as a person and also to help influence other kids that come along and to enjoy the outdoors, grow as people, respecting me, respecting others, and of course, respecting themselves.
The combination of activities and people and the place that contains them continues to fuse into something greater than their own sum. The special quality of the camp, written in water, in sun, in a song, in a cheer, in the dust of the baseball diamond, the swelling of a sail, the smoke of a campfire. This is the Camp Kennebec experience. Uncle Bernie Lemnick summed it all up.
Kennebec lives in the hearts and minds of hundreds and hundreds of our alumni. Touched by the unique adventure of their Kennebec camping days, Kennebec men reach out to others and pass on their Kennebec feelings. A sweet sense of shared experience is especially felt among fathers, sons, grandsons who are Kennebeckers. It is an attachment to their camp, something warm, glowing, friendly, and indelible. It is an experience without equal, a story without end.
If there's a spirit as bright as the sun on a hot summer's day, and if there's that spirit undoubtedly, you'll find it at CK. If there's a campfire glowing, when we will have gone far away, with budding new friendships surrounding it, you'll find it at CK. Junior ball games, senior meets, lake canoeing, mess hall eats, all are fun and all are here, all up here, year by year. If there's tradition as old as the Royal Maroon and the Grey, with memories returning as time goes on, you'll find it at CK.